start the warm-up, the intro. Let's go ahead and start it. The call to order the meeting of the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission for the night of October the 28th, 2021. Accommodations have been made to ensure that the public is able to participate in the meeting. The public may participate in the following ways: watch the meeting on Franklin TV or the City of Franklin website. You can watch the live stream through the City of Franklin website, Facebook and YouTube accounts. Email comments to the planning intake at franklintn.gov to be provided in full to the commission and included in the minutes, but not read aloud in their entirety during the meeting. Emailed comments are accepted until 12 o'clock noon on the day before the meeting. You may comment in person in the boardroom. Speakers will be asked to fill out a speaker card prior to the meeting starting. Speakers may sit in the boardroom or wait in the lobby. So with that, the first item on our agenda is the approval of our minutes from the September 23rd, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Do I have a motion? Hang on. We had a motion by Ann and a second by Alma McLemore to approve the minutes. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Franks is still not with us tonight. Okay. Commissioner Harrison?
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore? Aye. Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner Orr?
Aye.
Alderman Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye as well. And so I realized that the first thing I did not do was do our roll call. And so Commissioner Allen is present.
Present.
Commissioner Franks is not. Commissioner Harrison?
Present.
Present. Commissioner McLemore? Present. Commissioner Mann?
Present.
Commissioner Orr?
Present.
Alderman Peterson?
Present.
Commissioner Williamson? And Commissioner Lindsay is present as well. Thank you. So the next item is for citizen comments on items that are not on our agenda for tonight. This is a time when the meeting is open for Franklin citizens to be heard on items not included on this agenda. As provided by law, the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission shall make no decisions or consideration of action on citizen comments except to refer the matter to the planning director for administrative consideration or to schedule the matter for Franklin Municipal Planning Commission consideration at a later date. So are there any citizen comments on items not on the agenda? Yes, Amy?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Seeing none, next on our agenda is announcements.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We need to vote on item 2, calendar for next year.
Okay. Okay, I've got that coming up, so hang on just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
It was number 2 on my, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I think the
lengthier agenda we gave you actually had it misordered from the actual
Okay.
agenda.
Okay, yes.
Sorry
So my
about that.
apologies to
I'm
the
following
chairman.
multiple
Yeah,
agenda
okay.
sheets here, so, okay. Okay, so item 2 on the agenda is for the consideration of approval of the January 2022 to January 2023 FMPC calendar. So, staff.
I'm here to answer any questions with it. It was attached to the agenda.
Okay, is there any public comment on the calendar for next year? Seeing none. I'll just entertain a motion at this point for
Move for
approval of the
appro-
calendar. Is there anything?
Move for approval.
Okay, I have a
Second.
motion for approval by Marcia,
Allen,
by Commissioner Allen,
I'll second it.
and Scott Harrison, second. Is there any discussion on the calendar? Seeing none by roll call vote. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore, Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson, and Commissioner Williamson. And Chair Lindsay votes aye, so that motion passes. Okay, I'm going to jump back in my list here. Announcements.
Thank
Emily.
you. Sorry about the mistake, Mr. Chair. So just another routine announcement. The Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals virtual training is Friday, November 5th from 8 a.m. to noon. I did email out the registration link to you all either last week or this week. If you can't be available at that time, the training will be recorded, and you can go back and watch it at a later date. We just request that you do that before the end of the year and let us know when you've completed it. Also, I have a really great announcement. Our Harpeth Square development here in downtown Franklin received the 2021 Urban Land Institute Award of Excellence in Development for a large project in the private sector. So we want to congratulate them and their development team on that.
Great, thank you, Emily. The next item is a vote to place non-agenda items on the agenda. So the non-agenda process by design is reserved for rare instances, and only minor requests are considered. Non-agenda items shall be considered only upon the unanimous approval of all of the Planning Commission members. So are there any non-agenda items that would be placed on our agenda for tonight?
Not tonight.
Not tonight, okay. Thank you. So the next item is consent agenda. So the consent agenda for tonight is for items number 4 through 6 and items 12 through 17 of our agenda. Is there a motion, is there anyone who wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda? I'm sorry, wait a minute. Alma? We have a motion by Commissioner McLemore. And a second? Second by Williamson. Okay. By roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore, Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr, Alderman Peterson, Commissioner Williamson, and Chair Lindsay votes aye. That motion passes. Okay, the next item is item number 7. Consideration of ordinance 2021-44, an ordinance to rezone 12 acres from R1 district to planned PD 0.92 district for the property located north of Boyd Mill Avenue and west of Glass Lane at 600 Boyd Mill Avenue. That's the historic Magnolia Hall PUD subdivision. We'll start off with staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The rezoning is to accommodate the proposed entitlements of the historic Magnolia Hall PUD subdivision. The plan proposes 11 single-family residential lots, including the historic home currently on the grounds of the property. The subject property is within the conservation subdivision design concept, which states it does support primarily single-family residential development that clusters lots and infrastructure and sets aside a substantial amount of property as permanently protected open space in its natural state. The proposed zoning is consistent with the recommendations of Envision Franklin. The development plan for historic Magnolia Hall PUD is also on tonight's agenda. With that, staff recommends approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So at this point, we can, and bear in mind, this is the first of 3 items related to Magnolia Hall. So, we're prepared to open for public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment on the development, on the ordinance to rezone for the property at 600 Boyd Mill Avenue, if you'd come to the lectern. And seeing no one, is there a presentation by the applicant?
Thank you, Chairman. Adam Sager with Dale & Associates, 516 Heather Place. I am the civil engineer for the project. Also here with me is Bernie Butler, the developer, and Jason Goddard and Mike Hathaway, all on the design team. This item before you is the rezone to the PD, and of course, along with the rezone is the development plan. And so the next one, as you mentioned on the agenda, probably will have a little bit more conversation. This is for 11 total units, one of which is the existing Magnolia Hall, and we agree with staff recommendation and would appreciate your approval on that one. So, thank you.
Thank you, Adam. So do we have a motion on this item?
Move for approval with staff comments.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Harrison.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Orr.
There are no
I'm sorry.
comments, my bad. I should have said to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. My apologies.
Recommendation for approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Okay. Is there any comment, any discussion on this item? Seeing none, by roll call vote, we have a motion for recommendation of approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison?
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore? Aye. Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner Orr?
Aye.
Alderman Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson? Aye. And Chair Lindsay votes aye. That motion passes. Item number 8 is a consideration of Resolution 2021-151, a resolution approving a development plan for historic Magnolia Hall PUD subdivision with 5 modifications of development standards for the property located north of Boyd Mill Avenue and west of Glass Lane at 600 Boyd Mill Avenue. Turn it over for staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The plan proposes 10 new single-family residences in addition to the existing historic home for a total of 11 residential lots. Envision Franklin places this parcel in the conservation subdivision design concept. Envision Franklin gives special consideration to the Magnolia Hall property by saying the historic home and the existing view sheds of the property should be preserved. Limited clustered single-family infill may be appropriate if the historic estate and its setting are preserved. Proper integration and transition should be provided to the historic buildings, and the layout of the site should make the historic buildings the prominent features of the development. The plan as proposed preserves the more than 50% of the open space, including the pond and view shed of the home from Highway 96 West. All of the new construction is located along the western boundary of the property, leaving the historic Magnolia Hall Manor as a prominent feature of the site. New trails and shared green space on the historic front lawn of the home provide active use areas for the residents. There are five MOS requests for this proposal relating to sidewalks and retaining wall standards. For modification of standards 1 through 3, we're going to kind of just take all those together because they are so similar. The applicant is requesting to not require sidewalks along the exterior of the development. Each request requires a separate MOS based on the geographic location of the perimeter of the property. MOS number 1 is for the sidewalk along New Highway 96 West. MOS number 2 is for sidewalk along Glass Lane. And MOS number 3 is for sidewalk along Boyd Mill Road. Section 9.6.1 requires that sidewalks must be installed on both sides of public and private streets and internal drives with all new development. The City of Franklin periodically receives requests to construct sidewalks in existing neighborhoods where a sidewalk was not required previously. Generally, sidewalk gap projects are more expensive to construct than if they were constructed at the time of development. Sidewalk gap requests can ultimately become larger capital projects that cost the city hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars over time. The zoning ordinance requirement for sidewalks is essential for developments to provide pedestrian infrastructure for future and existing residents. Staff recommends denial of MOS 1 through 3. Should any of the MOS requests for the removal of required sidewalks be approved by the board, mayor, and aldermen, staff does recommend the condition that sidewalk fees and lieu be paid by the developer at $19 per square foot for future sidewalk gap projects. I know Jimmy Wiseman in our engineering department also has some additional thoughts on this as well. We do have an exhibit to kind of show the request as well.
Yeah, thank you, Joey. As he mentioned, we consistently receive requests for sidewalk gap projects. Some come to fruition to the board and then ultimately can transform into larger capital projects. And to list a few, the South Royal Oaks Gap Project, Forest Crossing Boulevard Sidewalk Gap Project, Oak Meadow, Carruthers Parkway, not to mention the multi-use trail along and the sidewalk on Highway 96 that have been constructed and provide a great benefit. So looking at the exhibit, this will kind of help you visualize the MOSs that are on the table tonight. We understand the difficulty to construct the one on 96. However, the ordinance does not speak to difficulty of construction or cost. It just speaks to construction of the sidewalk. On Glass Lane, which is, I believe, MOS number 2, an option would be to incorporate, where it would be very difficult to build it along Glass Lane, to incorporate the proposed trail system into the sidewalk and put it in a public access easement. And then as you move Page east, the Boyd Mill sidewalk is fairly easy to construct and would ultimately create a substantial loop that provide better connectivity to our parks and schools in the area. Happy to answer any other questions as well.
So that was for MOS 1 through 3, and those are for the 3 requests to remove the requirement for sidewalks along the exterior of the property. So for MOS number 4, the applicant is requesting to not require internal sidewalks within the development. Section 9.6.1 requires that sidewalks must be installed on both sides of public and private streets and internal drives with all new development. Staff cannot support not requiring internal sidewalks. However, given the historic nature of the site and Magnolia Hall's periphery access to Glass Lane, staff can support, in the singular instance, installing sidewalks only along the western side of the new internal road in order to provide pedestrian connectivity to the new residences. The applicant shall work with the engineering department to determine the exact location of the internal sidewalk. Staff recommends approval with conditions of MOS number 4, with the condition that sidewalks are installed on the western side of the internal public streets along the new construction. MOS number 5, the applicant is requesting to locate a retaining wall within 5 feet of public right-of-way. Section 13.2.2 of the zoning ordinance states that retaining walls shall be set back from a lot line and a minimum of 5 feet or the distance equal to the height of the wall, whichever is greater. Given the location of the pond and the proximity to the internal drive and the required buffers along the pond, staff can support locating the retaining wall within 0 feet of the public right-of-way, provided the applicant meets the condition approval of MOS number 4 relating to the internal sidewalk location. So staff recommends approval with conditions of MOS number 5. So with that in mind, staff recommends approval with conditions of the historic Magnolia Hall PUD subdivision to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we can open at this point for public comment. If anybody would like to speak to the item for the development plan, please come to the lectern and give us your name and address, and we ask you to hold your comments to 2 minutes, please.
No problem. Thank you all for being here and giving me the opportunity to speak about our neighborhood's growth. I'm Scott Jordan, if you will. I'm at 400 Boyd Mill. I'm a newcomer, but I've seen lots of development plans through my life of 50 years. So I'm very crucial and critical about a hardship, why sidewalks shouldn't be required. I haven't heard the hardship yet. So they have to be accessible 100%, 360 degrees. Take a bond out, do something now, build them within the development time. That's what I recommend. Internal, external, 1 through 5. Number 5, it sounds like you have an opportunity to build a very nice traditional wall with a walkway, almost like the wall of China, and give them back their room inside. So with that, I'll wrap up, but we have to think forward. We can't just leave that community isolated, and if we have a sidewalk on one side of the street and there's an issue and you run out to the street, you're not on the sidewalk, you're not safe. So let's continue to go safe, accessible, and make it look good. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Hello, I'm Damon Rogers, 431 Boyd Mill Avenue, and thank you for your service and allowing public comments for us tonight. I'm not sure what the two men said because I don't know all the little acronyms that's going on, but what I do know is that our neighbors have gotten together on several occasions with Bernie Butler, and I took notes during those meetings, and for that, we thank Bernie for being so open about that. This property is the absolute most magnificent property in this part of historic Franklin on the western side. And we are urging you to keep it as the queen of all properties. So what our neighbors suggested to Bernie, and what I am seeing in some of the concept design, thank you, Bernie, is he has already reduced the number of homes, which were originally from 15 to 12 to now 10. So thank you for that, and that's 10 new homes and plus Magnolia Hall. The word subdivision kept coming up. We don't want a subdivision feel in this neighborhood. We don't want concrete curbs and gutters. We want a more pastoral feel using cobblestone, aggregate, or brick pavers in lieu of asphalt, and using granite rolled curbs instead of concrete. We also don't want to see any removal of the beautiful canopied maple trees that afford an elegance to the entrance and show off Magnolia Hall to the full glory, and it allows privacy to that property. The width of the entrance and drive should either be kept as it is, or what Bernie recommended was 20 feet wide. I'd still love to see pebbles in that driveway. I happen to live in my family home of 1919, and so change, I like change, but I want to keep it old. I want to keep the feel. A sidewalk on one side of Boyd Mill, across from Magnolia Hall, is already there. I know there's some rules that we have to follow, but I will tell you, I was the sidewalk lady for Boyd Mill, and we had exceptions to the sidewalk because Boyd Mill was originally built as a carriage street, and it is not a wide street. So I urge you to make exceptions to the rule and only keep Boyd Mill on one side. Was that my timer?
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to this item?
Good evening. My name is Gary Miner. I live at 609 Boyd Mill Pike. A miner has owned that property since it was built in 1987. My mother lived there for 20 years. My brother bought it at her death, and I live there now. Member of my family has owned real estate in Williamson County since 1967. I say that not because it's about me tonight, but just to let you know I'm not just passing through. I've been here for a while and plan to be here for a while longer. The pond has been addressed. The house has been addressed. This unique property has three very unique features: this pond and the house and the maple-lined driveway. Do you really want the headlines of the Williamson Herald to say, Planning Commission recommends cutting down 15 trees that have been there for 170 years? Doesn't look very good, Mr. Chair. It really doesn't. I would hope that you would allow these three features all to stand, including the pond, which I heard addressed earlier. But we need to keep these trees. We need to keep a 20-foot road so that these trees can survive. I understand the value of curbs and gutters. I understand of sidewalking being everywhere. In the last 3 weeks, I spent time in Memphis, Little Rock, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and if you brought me blindfolded into Magnolia Hall with 30-foot streets and curbs and gutters and took off my blindfold, I would see a neighborhood like any neighborhood in any of those other cities I've been in. We can do better in Franklin. We have so many times. This is the time to say the rules make sense, like most rules, most of the time, but not this time. It's a unique property. We need to keep it a unique property. Let us build a 20-foot road there. Let us enjoy that view of Magnolia Hall from Boyd Mill Pike and other parts of the property without making it look like every other neighborhood in every other city in anywhere USA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of Planning Commission, I'm John Schroer. I'm an alderman for another 3 weeks, and I'll let you all know that. I live at 512 Boyd Mill Avenue, and last time when you all met, I talked passionately about this project and what was going on. And tonight I want to talk about modification standards 1 through 3. And could someone show that the sidewalk map, please? Instead of talking about rules, I want to talk about common sense. You know, oftentimes government doesn't have common sense, and I've been in public service for 25 years, and I understand that completely. And some rules need to be followed, and some rules don't. And I want to talk about these sidewalks. And first of all, I've got 3 neighbors that live on Glass Lane, and they're here to speak. And I'm not speaking on their behalf. I want them to speak on their own behalf. And then my entranceway to my house is on Glass Lane, but my address is Boyd Mill. And so the sidewalk that is facing west that's being required to be built, in order to do that, they're going to have to cut down about a 12-foot vegetation screen that is now currently there in order to build a sidewalk that no one who lives there wants, and on a road that is seldom walked on. And the worst thing about that road, we don't want to encourage people to walk on that road, not because we live there, but because if they're going north, they're going to be at the corner of Glass Lane and Highway 96. You do not want to cross that road, and there's no other sidewalk anywhere. Even if you make Bernie build that sidewalk going west, it doesn't go anyplace else. It just stops right there. It's a sidewalk to nowhere. And we do not want people crossing that street. You're going to have fatalities. That's also a school crossing, which makes a little bit of difference. There's a traffic light at Boyd Mill. There's a traffic light at 11th. That's where our pedestrians need to go, and they have crosswalk signs. We need them to be there. We need to push them there. I'll reiterate what Gary said. There's already I guess, well, anyway, there's already a sidewalk on the south side of Boyd Mill. There's very little property on the other side, and if you build that sidewalk in front of that property, it will go to the park, but it stops at that corner and won't go further. So that's the only place that will be there. So there's no purpose for that sidewalk. You really don't want people being on the sidewalk, crossing the road to get to the other sidewalk on the other side. You want them to stay where they are. It's well used. That road has a lot of, the sidewalk has a lot of traffic, and it leads right to the park, and we watch it all the time. We walk on it all the time. It's heavily used. They won't use it on the other side because it doesn't go anywhere. And finally, on Highway 96, really, folks, have you seen that? It's impossible to build a sidewalk there, quite frankly. It drops off at the edge of the road, drops 10 or 15 feet. There'd be no way that they could build a sidewalk there. And that you talked about the cost or the problem. That's not in the ordinance. The ordinance doesn't mention the inability, the impossibility to build a sidewalk. And the other thing, let's not forget that the city is spending how many millions of dollars, they mentioned $1 million, to build a 10-foot multi-purpose path right on the other side of Highway 96 that goes all the way to Macatcher, all the way down to Hillsborough Road. We don't want them on the other side of the road. We want them on the north side, and plus that, it will stop at Glass Lane, and beyond that, you have no sidewalk on the other side. Why would you attract somebody to a sidewalk that they can't go on, that they're going to have to cross the street on? It's a waste of time, and Bernie's willing, I think, to pay money into the sidewalk fund, which is good. It can be used at some place that's really needed. They are just not needed here. There's sidewalks right now all the way. When you look at it with the construction of Highway 96, there's sidewalks all the way around this property that have access, except for on Glass Lane, and nobody that lives on Glass Lane wants it, and nobody walks on that road. And we wouldn't want people walking on the road because of the safety. Thank you very much. My 2 minutes is up. I've never talked that short either in my life. So,
Thank you, John.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Woody Woodruff. I live in John Schroer's backyard. I really do. Ours is the first house facing Glass Lane at 713 Glass Lane once you turn off of Boyd Mill onto Glass Lane. I completely agree with everything that John said. I want to emphasize one thing that he didn't mention. On that west side of Glass Lane, there's above-ground utilities and a utility easement. Now, I don't know if the city is going to put those utilities underground if this sidewalk gets built. But it's going to be an issue if a sidewalk's going to go in there. What are you going to do with the utilities that already exist there? And that's certainly not an inexpensive undertaking. But John's point is extremely well taken, that we don't want to encourage anyone to cross Highway 96 at the intersection with Glass Lane. It's hazardous. It's safe to cross Highway 96 at 11th and at Boyd Mill because there are traffic lights. There's marked pedestrian crosswalks. There's pedestrian control lights. At Glass Lane, there's none of that. And in fact, if you turn to the right coming out of Glass Lane, you then have an entrance into that little area where there's a law firm and another business located there. There's no sidewalks along there. Where's this foot traffic going to go? Why is there going to be a sidewalk on the west side of Glass Lane? It doesn't serve any practical purpose that I can discern, and I would recommend that that the developer's requested exemption be granted. I also want to completely endorse what Damon said about the cooperation that Bernie Butler has shown to the neighbors in the Boyd Mill Buckworth neighborhood. At the very first neighborhood meeting, he said that he wanted to get everybody on the same page. And the only way he was going to do that was by listening to the neighbors and compromising, and he has done it. And I fully support the plan as proposed, and I ask the commission to recommend approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen with the developers' requested exceptions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Pierce, and I live at 103 Woodview Court in Charlton Green, which would not be allowed to be built in Franklin today, but it's still shown off as one of the nice neighborhoods in Franklin. We don't have internal sidewalks. No one's been hurt. Everyone walks, and I think we would be remiss if we did not understand that this is an outlier project. This is one of our landmark properties in Franklin, and we are building on the front lawn. And I very much appreciate Bernie Butler's cooperation in looking at a plan that does not have a lot of hardscape. I'm completely against putting any internal sidewalks in. And because it has the soft feel of a historic property, just getting sidewalks all around it in impractical places is not going to help the aesthetic of it either. We have been on a long journey in Franklin to try to earn the reputation of historic Franklin. If this, I would argue, if a showcase property like this were in another community, entertaining the idea of building on the front lawn might not be entertained. But we are in a red-hot community with development, and I ask that we use care, common sense, and the journey that we've been on to save the aesthetic of our community and not be any place USA. And one of the great things Woody Woodruff said to me one time when he was serving on the Heritage Foundation Board, that historic preservation is not about saying no, it's about saying yes to the right things. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Other comments? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Is there a presentation by the applicant?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Adam Sager again, Dale and Associates, 516 Heather Place. I think it's important to start off by reminding everyone that as the designer, we have been given instruction by the developer, and I love working for Bernie in this regard, to say the historic integrity of this property is paramount. It is the most important thing. We have to get it right. It has to be perfect. And so that idea has revolved all around the design of what we're going for. Just like you've heard many people say, there's been a lot of community engagement. This isn't something that happened overnight. It's been, I think, over 2 years in the making. There's been a lot of talks and a lot of consideration. I'm not here to tell you the whole story. Bernie's going to tell you a lot about that, but I just wanted to touch upon a few of these modification of standards and some of the things that were said. Modification of standards, I know there's 5 of them. The first 4 are really about the same thing. We don't want sidewalks around the community. 2 of them in particular, the one on 96 and Glass Lane, from an engineering perspective, I can't say anything's impossible to build as an engineer, but along Highway 96, you've got a 15-foot drop. You will probably be digging into that pond just to build the sidewalk. Same goes for the north part of Glass Lane as well. And then the south half, there are sidewalks around there, and the community does not want sidewalks around this community because it is an outlier. It's a unique property. Internally, there's been a big emphasis on having just the right look for a historic purpose. And so that's why we are asking to not put a sidewalk or not require a sidewalk on the internal side. And so that's modification of standards 1 through 4. Number 5 is about basically staying out of the buffer of the pond. The roadway, the drive that we're putting in, it comes a little bit close to the buffer up there by the pond. And so to get all the grades to work from an engineering perspective, we've got to hold that road up a few feet. And so we're asking for the modification of standards to allow that retaining wall to hold up the road so that we aren't tying those road slopes down into the pond area. So those are the reasons for the modification of standards. A couple other things to point, they talked about, a few people were talking about the pond and the entryway of the maples. There are beautiful sugar maples that line the entrance today. We're trying to preserve that. That is actually a modification of standards that we've asked of the engineering department, and I can answer questions on that, and as I'm sure Jimmy or staff could as well. And then the pond as well is going through engineering to allow it to be a feature of the site. And so we're working through those as well, and we're here to answer any questions on those. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bernie, and I'm here for any questions as well. Thank you.
Is this the height for Mary? And hey, I'm Bernie Butler, and I love Franklin, downtown Franklin in particular. It's the only place I work, and the fact that I got all these people here, I've been doing this for a really long time. I'm just very thankful. The modifications of standards that we're asking for are important. I'm not in the habit of asking for things that aren't important. And in particular, what we're trying to do is to maintain the rural character of this incredibly special National Register historic home for generations. All of us will be dead and gone, and the things that we decide in the next few months are going to impact all of that forever. So how we relate to the pond, what we do with it, how we interact with it, the street width, how it looks and it feels, everything matters as it relates to this 12 acres in and around that amazing house. And the reason we asked for a 20-foot street is because that's a 20-foot street in between these maple trees. And I've got copies of this if you'd like to see it. But we're 3 feet from the trunks of the inner maple trees with a 20-foot wide street. So if I make this street any wider than this, and this is, if you know anything about trees, we're going to have to do a really good job of maintaining the root balls of these trees and doing this street with this profile. Would it help for me to give these copies to you or not? I don't have to, but
No, please do.
thank you. These are about 5 copies. Thank you, Shauna.
Yeah.
So, oh my goodness. They were asking the engineering guys, because of the requirements they have, and it being a public street, they're trying to get an appropriate width with a sidewalk.
Nick's the one that won.
No, it's cool. I'll wait. If you pass it on when you're done, we share.
She put all of them on that side. You put all them in.
No,
Got it.
you're good.
With a sidewalk on one side in the right-of-way. So in order for us to do a sidewalk in the right-of-way with a 22, I think they're asking for, Jimmy, a 22-foot wide street? I think that's right, 24, 20.
Well, Bernie, I think the roadway has been, we've already worked with your staff on that, and the narrow roadway has been approved at a staff level. So we don't, unless we want to go into it further.
No, it was denied.
So, well,
It was 23, I think.
Okay, well, we
That's not
we
before
did
us.
narrow the roadway
think it's on
some. Maybe it was
modification
the
That's
entire
what we're considering.
width you were looking for, but
We're not
that's an
considering-
that is an engineering modification of standards, not something that's being considered tonight.
Oh, it didn't?
That's not in our modification
That's not
standards.
anything we're looking at right now.
Because it's an engineering modification of standards that's decided on by the Director of Engineering.
Right, we don't have
Right.
anything to do with
Just to
that.
clarify, that's already been
we-
decided by the Director of Engineering.
We don't have anything to do with that.
Well, I'm curious, was that modification approved or disapproved?
So we are at a 23-foot section, not a 20-foot section was what was
We can't select
approved
the Director of Engineering.
at
That's not
engineering
us.
staff level.
We don't get to do that.
And Jimmy, to clarify for the Planning Commission, if the applicant wanted to appeal that decision, what would be the process for that?
So that would go to the Street Standards Appeals Board, and the reason we were only able to go down to 23 feet was we consulted with the fire department, and if there is parking on a street, they have trouble getting around the parked cars, so that was really the safety concern that it ultimately came down to. We certainly want to be able to preserve the trees, and we'll work to do that any way we can, but we really were restricted by the fire department access in this situation.
Sorry,
Okay.
I didn't.
And so, just from a clarification standpoint, so the issue as it relate, before this body tonight, is relative to the
Sidewalk.
inclusion of a sidewalk down the side of that street as well. We have nothing to bring to the discussion about the width of the street, but we do have a consideration to the sidewalk, as I believe is where we are with that, which would be modification of standard number 4.
So we've requested no sidewalk, and part of the reason for that was that there's not room for that sidewalk along in the right-of-way along that street at 20, even 20 feet. So we're trying to do everything in the world to save the character of that drive going through the middle of the development. So we're asking to not have that internal sidewalk.
Okay, great. Okay? So, anything further, Bernie, or
Just
Okay.
answer questions if you have them.
anybody have any questions or for Bernie or his engineer? Okay, so we'll start off with a main motion. The main motion will be an overall motion toward the approval of this item for the development plan, and then we will handle with a main motion made and seconded. We'll handle each of the modification of standard requests as a separate motion, and then as those are decided, at the end of it all, the decisions made by those will roll up into, what the vote for the main motion at the end of it. So that's the way we typically handle. We start off with a motion for the project, the overall project, and then follow with our modifications. So is there a main motion?
Move for approval.
Motion for approval by Commissioner Orr made a motion for approval.
Scott made
I'm sorry.
I made the motion
Scott
for approval.
Harrison.
the.
Okay. Okay, so the main motion was made by Commissioner Harrison, and it was seconded by Commissioner Orr. And so, we've got a motion, a proper motion and second. We will start into the discussion on each of the modifications of standards. Modification of standard number 1, the applicant is requesting to not require sidewalks along the exterior of the development. Each request requires a separate MOS, request by location. MOS number 1 is for a sidewalk along New Highway 96 West, and staff recommends disapproval on this item. So is there any further staff presentation on this item?
Can you pull up the sidewalk, exhibit that was up there while we discussed this? Thank you.
So that would be the sidewalk on the far left of this exhibit along New Highway 96 West.
One question I have, just if staff can clarify that on 96, that there is plans for a multi On the other side. Modal, yeah, on the other side of 96.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm an avid biker. I bike to work a lot, every day, as much as I can. So on this, I've been in a lot of sidewalk situations. So for this particular thing, I do kind of have kind of an opinion on it. But first, I'd like to say, you know, when we start looking at historic properties, they don't necessarily all fit, you know, neatly into a box. And especially when we're looking at preserving historic, you know, properties, it's not just the house and it's not just a little parcel of land that it gets whittled away to, it's the whole area. So being an avid biker, having a lot of experience with using a lot of the great sidewalks and paths in Franklin, you know, I compare this situation very similar to what we have on Mac Hatcher, where currently on one side there's no sidewalk whatsoever. There's a wide breakdown lane, which I think is currently the case. Now, you know, 96 could be lanes added, but in my opinion, it's really no issue, because if you're gonna bike or if you're gonna walk, you're probably gonna use that because it's set off of the highway, usually a little bit more than typical sidewalk. And then, you know, if you're on road bike, you'll likely be on the multimodal, but also probably just on the road, because road bikes don't like to stop once they get going. So for the modification standard 1, when we look at 96, you know, in my opinion, using sidewalks a lot, I wouldn't see really an issue for the main purpose that this is a historic property. And if it wasn't, you know, then I would have a completely different opinion.
I have a motion to approve to recommend approval of modification of standard 1, because the comments that were made, if you get out on 96 West right there, first of all, there's hardly any room there, and it does go, you know, whenever we looked at it, we looked at, if you look at the contours there, I mean, it's just straight down, just straight down. And if you tried to move it further onto the property there, then it's going to hit the pond. So it really, and also, third thing, is that if you're there on Boyd Mill there, and you have the traffic signal, you could go across to this new multi-million-dollar, 10-foot wide, multi-use trail that is being constructed right now. If you go out there right now, you can hardly get through because they're working on it so much.
So,
wait,
and just for
but-
clarification, are you asking to remove modification standard of 1 from condition of approvals?
I'm
made a
going
motion.
to recommend approval of their request for modification of standard 1.
I just wanted clarification.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead. I'll
Okay,
second that motion.
so we have a proper motion to recommend approval of the modification, which was a request to not require the sidewalk along New 96 West. And Alma McLemore, Commissioner McLemore has made, has seconded that motion.
And I'd just like to say that the staff has done their job. They have to follow the requirements of the zoning ordinance, but just one size doesn't fit all every time. And with this development, the great points that were brought out, I will definitely be able to support the modification of standards on this.
Great. And Commissioner Allen, did you have a question?
I'd like to modify the motion to include the staff recommendation, which is pretty much standard, that however, fees in lieu of building
yes.
this
Thank you.
sidewalk be paid to the fund in the amount of $19 per square foot for future sidewalk gap projects.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Allen.
Because that was
to-
not made, you
to
did not
amend-
make that in your
To
motion.
amend that motion to include the payment of fee in lieu as defined by the staff.
Yes.
Is there a second for the motion to amend?
Second.
I'm sorry. Alma? I can't. So we have a second to that motion to amend by Commissioner McLemore. So by roll call vote for the amendment to the motion, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Franks is absent, Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr, Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Lindsey votes aye as well. So we've got an amendment to the motion that simply adds in the
Thank you.
requirement to
Thank
pay
you.
fee in lieu. And so we're back to the motion for the approval of modification of standard number 1 to not require the sidewalk along New 96 West and to pay the fee in lieu by roll call vote. Commissioner, is there any final discussion on this item? Seeing none by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr, Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and the Chair Lindsey votes aye as well. So the motion passes. Granting the request to not require sidewalks along New 96 West. The next item is the modification of standard number 2. The applicant is requesting to not require sidewalks along the exterior of the development. Modification of standard number 2 is for Glass Lane. And again, staff recommended disapproval on that item. Is there any further staff presentation on this item? Is there any further public comment on this item? I didn't think so. So is there any other discuss? Is there any other presentation by the applicant on this item? Okay, is there a motion on this item?
Move for modification of standard number 2.
We have
Approval.
approval of modification of standard number 2 with a requirement to pay.
With requirements to pay $19.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Harrison. And a second by Commissioner Orr. And that is a motion to approve the request to not require sidewalks along Glass Lane. Is there any discussion on this item?
Yes,
Mr. Chair,
I must say something, because I want to make sure, because first thing I'll be accused of being a hypocrite. Number 1, want to say that 99% of the time I always support staff recommendations. And in this case, they are following the rules exactly as they should. This is a special case. Everyone's already talked about the historic character of this home and the property. But not only that, also with the placement of this sidewalk, it is unusually, this street that it's on is unusually narrow. The situation for this just does not, in my, along with the historic property, is just not, it's not safe in my opinion, and it's just an unusual situation. So for that reason, I will not be supporting the staff recommendation. So I just need to be on record for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mann, did you have a comment?
I did. The trail that goes about almost halfway, are you planning on finishing that out if you aren't required to do sidewalks? I guess.
This is just a mowed strip of grass. It's not a trail because we're
Okay.
trying to protect the buffer around the pond. So it's a mowed strip of grass that actually comes across the dam. So it's just a walking trail that comes at the end of the cul-de-sac, crosses a little pedestrian bridge, and then is, 6 feet wide mowed strip that goes around. So everything else is native grasses and wildflowers.
Is that light green?
Yes, that light green. And then it comes back around and connects back to the, it's just a
Got
loop
it.
around the lake.
Okay.
Okay,
And is this motion to also pay the fee in lieu?
it is.
It is, okay.
Any other questions or discussion?
If you're looking at where 96 and Glass meet, that's very steep right there, very steep, so
Right.
another reason to
Thank you.
not
Any other
do it.
discussion? By roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr, Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Chair Lindsey votes aye as well. That motion passes. approving the request to not require sidewalks along Glass Lane. The next item is modification of standard number 3. The applicant is requesting to not require sidewalks along the exterior of the development. Modification of standard number 3 is for Boyd Mill Road. And again, staff recommended disapproval on that item. Is there any further staff presentation on this item? Okay. Any further public comment on this item? Thank you. And then any further publication, presentation by applicant on the item? Do we have a motion on the item?
Move for approval to grant modification number 3, and have the developer pay fees in lieu of sidewalk at $19 a square foot.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the request
Second.
to not build the sidewalk and to pay fees in lieu. And that motion was made by Commissioner Harrison and was seconded by Commissioner McLemore. Is there any further discussion on this item?
Well, as was stated, Boyd Mill has a sidewalk all the way from there down to, was it 11th or 9th? 11th? Yeah.
Okay.
But nothing on this side.
Right.
Any further comments, questions? Seeing none, by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr, Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Chair Lindsay votes aye. So that motion passes, granting the request to not require sidewalks along Boyd Mill Road. Modification of standards number 4. The applicant is requesting to not require internal sidewalks within the development. Staff recommends approval with conditions of modification of standard number 4, with the condition that sidewalks are installed on the western side of the internal public street. Staff, you want to kind of just refresh us? The western side is what's shown on this map as the red line?
Yes, so if you look at the map, or the exhibit on the screen, it's the red line that does kind of the half circular on the cul-de-sac and then extends in front of the new residential lots all the way out to Boyd Mill Avenue. So that would be required per the staff recommendation.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy, I'm going to look at you, but there's an opportunity that the sidewalk could be placed on the other side of the trees.
Correct. The zoning ordinance requires the sidewalk along the street, but does allow it to be off of the right-of-way and in a public access easement, as long as the intent of connectivity is met, and that would satisfy that. So it can be placed anywhere outside of the right-of-way to avoid obstructions or trees.
So in that scenario, you would have the edge of the street, tree with grass buffer, and then the sidewalk.
That could be the case, yes.
And that impacts, the interference with the trees is to the first 4 lots as you come in, it looks like. And then we get away from the actual both trees lining both sides of the road as it continues in. It looks also like that there would be additional challenges associated with where those trees are located with the installation of a driveway to each of those first 4 houses. Is there an expectation that there would be a driveway to each of those? Through the trees, between the trees?
Oh, wow.
So Jimmy, you could say it could be behind them.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I said too.
It's a dead-end street. Pedestrians can walk down the street on the edge safely with no issue.
And also looking at the property, yeah, this might not technically be in that plot of land, but, when you look at historic preservation, you also are looking at the area immediately outside of it. And so, especially that there's been effort made to use the same access of entry, and so it's like, okay, it probably makes sense not to do a sidewalk on one side if you are treating one side like historic and then the other one you're just like, oh, whatever, we'll put a sidewalk there.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this item?
that is?
I'll move for approval of modification of standard number 4 with the, what was it, the linear footage put towards.
19 square,
Huh?
$19
Payment in
square
lieu
foot.
Yeah,
of-
$19 a
Fee in
square
lieu
foot.
of $19 a square foot.
Or is it square yard? What is the unit? It's
Per
square
linear
foot.
foot.
Square
Square
foot.
foot.
Square foot put towards the, I think, the sidewalk fund.
I'll second it.
So that was a motion to approve the request to not require the internal sidewalk?
Correct.
Okay,
I'll
with the
second.
payment of fee in lieu.
I'll
And
second.
Commissioner Harrison has seconded that motion. Is there?
I have a question.
Yes.
For the fee in lieu, are you saying the fee in lieu for the, as the line, red line's currently drawn, or the fee in lieu if it was to be required to go all the way around? Because I think the halfway around is a compromise, I think. 19 square foot, $19 square foot would presume it goes all the way around.
All the way,
Does that make sense?
should be all the way.
Right, so if we're approving it without a sidewalk, but it's required to have a sidewalk all the way around the interior,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes,
By
it
zoning?
is.
That's what the zoning ordinance
Yes.
If
requires,
you did a
yeah.
fee
So
in
it's-
lieu, the $19 a square foot would be,
It's all
assuming
the
the
way
sidewalk
around.
goes both sides.
Yeah,
Oh,
yes,
it's all
it
the way
would,
around.
because
It's both
then,
sides.
Is that what you,
Yeah.
is that what we're
Yes.
saying, or are we just saying
yes, I-
$19 square
Yes.
foot for
Yeah.
one
It's all the way
side?
around.
I think that makes more sense, because this proposed red line would only be in other
Right,
conditions.
that's
So I think
compromise.
that
Okay.
makes sense to do it all
Yes.
the way around.
Okay,
Fine.
Yes.
want to make sure we were clear
That's how it
on,
works.
because
That's
that's
a
a
good
big
point.
dollar difference,
So it's based on
Yes.
so.
both
It's,
sides?
it's
Both
the fee,
sides.
it's both sides.
Yes.
That's how it
Yes,
works.
because that was the
Yeah.
requirement with the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, that's
So
how
we-
it works.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly,
Okay.
absolutely.
I think that
Is
makes
there any
sense.
further discussion on that item? Seeing none by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Chair Lindsay votes aye. So that motion passes, requesting to not install the sidewalks on the interior of the project. Okay, modification of standard number 5. The applicant is requesting to locate a retaining wall within 5 feet of a public right-of-way. Staff recommends approval with conditions of modification of standards number 5. Any further presentation, staff? No. Okay, is there any other public comment on this item? Okay. Any further presentation by the applicant on this item? Okay. Do we have a motion for this item?
I had a question. So this retaining wall, I'm looking at the plan, is that on the interior street
No,
facing the?
no, that's up there by the,
Driveway.
we need to
Show
show
the
a
map.
picture again.
The retaining-
Yeah, but it's up there on glass, I mean, it's close.
It's right around the
pond.
cul-de-sac,
Close
is
to
it
the
not?
pond.
Right, it's,
Adam.
as you get closer to the cul-de-sac, it's closer to the pond
To the
between,
pond.
So between kind of the cul-de-sac and the pond kind of area?
right, and back
Okay.
towards the historic house. It
Okay.
should be a darker, bold line
Yeah, it's-
along the
Oh,
right of way.
Okay, just wanted to double check.
And that allows you to maintain the integrity of the road as it encroaches the edge of the pond. Okay? Do we
I
have
make a motion to move to approve modification of standards.
We have a motion by Commissioner Harrison to approve the modification of standard number 5.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Orr? Seconded by Commissioner Orr. Is there any discussion?
I do have, one of the things that, I used to work for a public utility. One thing about, and something you may want to think about though, this is, when you're this close to public right of way, and a utility or anybody has to get in to do some work, you're taking a chance, a real chance of some damage being done to you. Something just to think about. That's pretty close. As I'm sitting here thinking, staff, I don't know if that's part of the reasoning for this, Is that part of the reason for this distance? Or am I just overthinking this? Because I used to work with construction and engineering. I was an engineer, and there were a lot of times when we were mighty close to damaging people's things when they would put things too close.
And I'll let Adam speak to it a little bit, but.
Adam, if you would.
We would keep the utilities out of the influence of the wall if if it needed to be repaired. It could be done without impacting the utilities. That would be a site plan level
Okay.
detail we would get into at that time.
Just to make sure, because I know there were times when we were close to busting up people's things. But anyway, I just thought about that.
Yeah, I agree with Jimmy. Most utilities are gonna be on the other side of the street.
Okay,
We're gonna encourage them to be in front of the houses, so we're not cutting services.
Okay,
on the drive.
okay, I just had a shudder
Good.
about that, I
Okay.
remember. for instance.
Good
Okay.
point, Commissioner Allen.
Okay.
Any other, you got
Yeah.
Commissioner Orr?
Just for the applicant, looks like the max height on the low end is just at the top of the walls, 4 feet higher than existing grade. Is there any concern about a fall protection or anything right there?
Not at 4 feet. This isn't gonna be up against the pavement. There
Right.
still will be separation from pavement and then to wall. And then this is gonna be more of a poured-in-place stone wall, decorative stone wall. Because if you're around the lake area, you're gonna be looking to it, and 4 feet's about this high, right, like that. And so it's, from a distance, it's just gonna look like about the ledge but that's in front of y'all right now. And so, from a fall protection, no, it'll be far enough away to where, it better not ever fall.
Well,
But-
So it's-
I mean, somebody falling off of it.
somebody
Not the
falling
wall
off of it.
falling
Yeah, there'll be a
over.
railing along the
Okay.
top of it.
That was one of the conditions of approval, was to provide a guardrail along the top of the
Along
wall.
the top, because it's 4 feet on the side facing the road, right?
Yeah, if you were to
But-
walk
but a
off the
steeper drop
pavement,
on the other
you
side.
would step off of it.
Right.
and Go down. So there will be a railing there to prevent people from stepping off.
Okay,
Okay, good.
okay. So we have a proper motion and second?
I had a question.
Wait a minute.
Just wanted to double check with Bernie on the pond. Would that be, if you can give us an update, we talked about that a lot in joint conceptual, that make sure that it's going to be maintained by the HOA of that community. Is that right?
Yeah, we got a lot of pond work to do, and we got a lot of pond work to do, so.
But it's secure with you-
That's
the maintenance of it.
yeah, it's a lot of work.
Okay.
Okay.
I just have one quick
Yes,
comment.
Commissioner Mann.
I know we've gone against staff recommendation a couple times on this project so far tonight, but I just want to tell the staff, thank you very much for all the thought you've put into this. I know you're applying the zoning ordinance into a flexible situation the best that you can. And I know we've gone against recommendations, but this truly is a unique property, and I just want to say thanks for all your hard work on this.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. Okay. So by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Chair Lindsay votes aye as well. That motion passes, approving the request to locate the retaining wall within 5 feet. So it's going to be a great project, Bernie.
It is.
Thank you. And again, thanks to staff.
Main motion, Mr.
Okay.
Main motion.
Point of order,
Main
Mr. Chairman.
The main motion.
Main
those are just
motion.
I'm sorry.
Main motion.
So we've got a whole bunch of modifications passed. Now we have to roll those into our main motion.
Right.
Is there any?
We got to vote for the main motion.
So all 5 of the modification of standards motions have passed, granting those requests. Is there any other discussion on the main motion? Okay, so we've got a motion approving the development plan with 5 modification of standards that have been approved. That motion was made by Commissioner Harrison and seconded by Commissioner Orr. Is there any final discussion on that item? Thanks to my fellow commissioners for keeping me keeping me on track. By roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Chair Lindsay votes aye as well. That motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Item number 9, consideration of ordinance 2021-46, an ordinance to rezone 7.53 acres from Regional Commerce 6, RC6 District, to planned PD 39.44, 8,595 District for the property located north of Cool Springs Boulevard and east of Machatcher Parkway at 151 Cool Springs Boulevard. That project is called The Haven at Cool Springs PUD subdivision. Staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposed rezoning with entitlements is to accommodate 297 multifamily dwelling units and 8,595 square feet of commercial space for the Haven at Cool Springs PUD subdivision. The subject property is within the regional commerce design concept. Envision Franklin states that new development in this design concept contains high-intensity activity centers that attract large numbers of people and employers from both within and outside of the city. The proposed rezoning is appropriate based on the recommendations of Envision Franklin. The development plan for the Haven at Cool Springs PUD subdivision is also on tonight's agenda. Staff recommends approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, is there someone representing the applicant here tonight?
Hi, I'm Katie Rudowski. I'm with Kaiser Vogren Design. I'm the applicant for the project. We have members of our design team and developer here as well. We have been working with staff. We agree with all of the comments and look forward to any questions you guys might have.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion for this item? So we have a motion by Commissioner Harrison. That's a approval, to recommend approval to BOMA. And my second was Alma. Commissioner McLemore. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen. Aye. Commissioner Harrison. Aye. Commissioner McLemore. Aye. Commissioner Mann. Aye. Commissioner Orr. Aye. Alderman Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson.
Aye.
And Chair Lindsay votes aye as well. That motion passes. Recommendation to recommend approval to BOMA. Item number 10 is a consideration of Resolution 2021-154. This is a resolution approving a development plan for Haven at Cool Springs PUD subdivision for the property located north of Cool Springs Boulevard and east of Machatcher Parkway, located at 151 Cool Springs Boulevard. Staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Haven at Cool Springs PUD subdivision proposes 297 multifamily residential units and 8,595 square feet of commercial space located on the property at 151 Cool Springs Boulevard. The subject property consists of 7.53 acres and is within the regional design concept as determined by Envision Franklin. New developments within regional commerce should have integrated designs with coordinated access, amenities, and cohesive architecture that fits within the context of the corridor. Additionally, new multifamily residential is encouraged within regional commerce to create lively, walkable neighborhoods near restaurants, shops, grocery stores, and workplaces. First floors are encouraged to have active commercial spaces, including retail, restaurants, leasing offices, and other amenities, which should be individually accessible from the street. In locations where commercial use on the first floor is not viable, multifamily units should provide individual ground floor entrances, stoops, or front porches, and pedestrian connections to the street or to a drive resembling a street. The plan as presented meets the recommendations of Envision Franklin and is compatible with the surrounding area. While the Haven at Cool Springs meets city standards, the property is located in the Mallory Valley Utility District. At this time, Mallory Valley has not yet granted water availability to the developer for this project. Should the development be approved, entitlements may not be based on the utility circumstances. And everyone is happy with the sidewalks. Happy to answer any questions. Staff recommends approval.
You just said we're still awake.
Yeah. Staff recommends approval with conditions to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joey. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? Seeing none, is there someone representing the applicant? Katie?
Yes, Katie Rudowski with Kaiser Vogren Design. I'm happy to answer any questions you all might have.
What about the Mallory Valley? What's
Okay.
going on with them?
I'll have our civil engineer speak to that.
Hi, Mary McGowan with Kimley Horn, civil engineer. We've requested the capacity. We've had conversations with them. There's no real issue. They just haven't actually provided the letter so we can provide it to staff. That's all.
Okay.
The only comment I've had just in the package is I know there's elevations and kind of 3D model included. And I think previous time we had seen this, we had commented that the exterior looked a little austere and flat. And I see on the front elevation, there's nice balconies popped in, and it really helped to, vary that facade. But my only comment would be kind of on the rear of the building, that there's no balconies. So from a point of varying the facade a bit, that might be a good thing to do, because then the back of the building becomes flat. But also, if that's going to be a multifamily unit of some sort, they're also going to have a beautiful view. So, wouldn't it be nice if there was actually balconies on the back of the building? That was my only comment.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this item?
Move for approval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
So we have a motion for approval, recommend approval to BOMA by Commissioner Harrison,
Second.
and that was by Commissioner Allen. A second by Commissioner Allen. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Orr,
Aye.
Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson,
Aye.
and Chair Lindsay votes aye as well, so that motion passes. Item number 11 is consideration of Resolution 2021-122, a resolution approving a development plan for Hamilton PUD subdivision, including one modification of standard, that being block length perimeter, for a property located north of Old Charlotte Pike and west of Del Rio Pike, that being the Hamilton PUD subdivision. Staff.
Thank you, Chair. The proposed Hamilton PUD subdivision development plan has been approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen at the recommendation of the Planning Commission. The approval included the removal of Condition 51, which states that any changes to Connect Franklin must be approved by the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission prior to the approval of this development plan by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Since the consideration of BOMA's recommendation of the Connect Franklin amendments were deferred by the BOMA and the timeline was thus extended, the BOMA did not want to hold up the approval of this development plan. The Connect Franklin amendments are on the agenda for approval by the Planning Commission tonight, making the condition on this development plan no longer necessary. The Planning Commission must take a vote of affirmation on the amended conditions of approval as approved by BOMA. Staff recommends that Planning Commission affirm the amended conditions of approval as considered and approved by BOMA.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just.
Yes.
I know we wrote that to include all the information, but simply put, there's a condition that said that the major thoroughfare plan needed to be approved prior to BOMA approval. The major thoroughfare plan was deferred, so it got held up. The board went ahead and approved the development plan with removing this condition, and we're simply asking for you to affirm the removal of that condition is no longer really necessary, because you're about to, on the very next item, vote on the major thoroughfare plan.
Okay. And so now, so we will entertain a motion to affirm that vote. And while that motion remains open, we'll handle modification of standards number 1. Is that separate?
Everything else has already been approved by you. This is because you guys, the
Oh, we
planning
jumped ahead.
commission, did not recommend removal of condition 51.
Okay.
And I will
BOMA
also
did,
say
so.
that the major thoroughfare plan discussion was deferred at BOMA due to an issue that is not even in tonight's consideration and is outside the scope of this plan itself.
Okay. Okay, I was just looking at the staff report, and there's a lot of discussion about modification of standards. So,
If I can get into more specifics,
I know.
the major thoroughfare plan, we expected it to be approved before this plan was approved by BOMA. But there was a concern about the Fieldstone Farms Parkway extension.
Yes, exactly.
Which led to deferral of the major thoroughfare plan at BOMA. That was far outside the scope of this project, but it held up items related to this project. So the
Okay.
board of mayor and aldermen removed the condition so that this plan was not held up in the process. This is a formality at this point to affirm this, but it is part of the process.
Just to affirm the,
Affirm the removal of condition 51.
okay.
You don't, yeah, it's your choice.
No.
Makes me not want to do it, I'm gonna be honest with you.
okay. Does anyone from the public wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, is there an applicant that would speak to this item?
The applicant asked if he needed to stick around for this, and I informed him that I would speak on behalf, so.
Okay.
Are we
Okay.
essentially adding one lot to a previous approved plan? Is that what the bottom line is here?
No, so you're not making any changes to the plan. The only thing that is happening is that you're just removing one condition of approval that was, and Jimmy, maybe you can explain this better, but the
So-
major thoroughfare plan that is going to be the next item has some changes in it that apply to this area of the city, and this plan complies with those changes.
Should we
Right.
not have looked at the major thoroughfare plan first? So we know what these changes are?
This
You
plan
can
incorporates those
reorder.
changes into the plan. So this plan matches
Yeah,
the
they're-
major thoroughfare
the-
plan
both
that's
plans-
being voted on the next item. They are in compliance with each
They
other.
match each other.
Both plans should match, and there was no controversy over the change that would have affected this development plan. So the board and staff felt comfortable with removing that condition that the major thoroughfare plan be approved first, because the delay was for Fieldstone Parkway, nothing else.
That's right.
For Fieldstone Parkway?
And that was, and that-
Extending Fieldstone Parkway.
Yeah, and now that has been, that is on Amendment 5, which is a separate discussion
It's
from
not
what
even
we're
being
talking
discussed.
about
Okay,
tonight.
that's nowhere near what we're talking about right now.
That's
Fieldstone
correct,
Parkway.
yeah, it's on the other side of Hillsborough Road.
So our motion can be as simple as to simply vote to affirm the amended conditions of approval as considered and approved by BOMA.
And Chair, if you don't mind, the reason you have to do this, the law says that you have to recommend to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen things related to planning, and in particular, development plan, zoning, rezonings, annexation. If the Board of Mayor and Aldermen make any changes to the plan that you didn't consider, it has to come back to you for a expert review of what they just did. If you agree, then it stays here and it's over. If you do not agree, then it would go back to BOMA to hear that Planning Commission did not agree with the changes they made, but this is the process, and this is why we have to do this.
Okay.
So if BOMA makes any changes to anything you recommend, you'll see it again.
That should happen more often.
Well, thankfully it doesn't, because they listen to the experts.
Okay.
What's that?
The normal order is we would do it first and then they would do it, but in this case,
Yeah.
they did it and sent it back to us.
Well, you did it,
We did.
and then they changed it, and so you now see it
Send it back to us.
again.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I think our charge is relatively simple. Is there a motion? Move for approval to amend the. To affirm.
To affirm.
To affirm. Okay, so we have a motion to affirm by Commissioner Orr and Commissioner Mann. Commissioner Mann made the second. So any final discussion? Okay, all by roll call vote. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison?
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore? Commissioner Mann? Commissioner Orr? Alderman Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson? And Chair Lindsay votes aye. That motion passes. Item number 18, the consideration of Resolution 2021-113, a resolution to adopt an amendment, number 4, to the 2016 Comprehensive Transportation Network Plan, the Major Thoroughfare Plan, an amendment related to updating the existing and proposed roadway network in various locations of the city of Franklin, Tennessee. Staff presentation?
I would yield the first part of my time to any comments from the public, and then I'll make my presentation afterwards.
Okay. Does anyone from the public
Yes.
wish to speak to this item? Yes, sir. You look familiar.
Full times.
You can see him sitting right there.
Nice to see everybody again. I'm Doug Berry. I'm an attorney with Miller Martin Law Firm in Nashville, and I represent Ellen Moore. Ms. Moore, as you probably know, owns a large farm in the West Harpeth area, and had a concern about statements in the plan about construction of streets that were across, about planned conceptual streets that were shown as crossing her farm. And so and that's shown on the figure 3.12. And so there is a statement on page 38 of the plan concerning the West Harpeth Area Local Network Plan that says, recognizing the need for connectivity, the property owners proposed a network of high-volume roadways. Let me say Ms. Moore participated in all these property owner meetings and so forth that took place in the spring. These roadways are conceptual and shown for potential connectivity and planning. Final layout and location shall be determined by city staff with FMPC and/or BOMA approval. And then it says these high-volume local roadways can be constructed as development occurs in the area. But I think the staff's intention is that these roadways would not be built except as dictated by new development. What's worrisome to Ms. Moore and perhaps to others is that even shown as conceptual, just conceptual routes, they are, the implication is that these roadways might be built without the permission or as part of a development plan by that owner. And I've never known the city I shouldn't say that, I haven't been around that much lately as I used to be, but to require the construction of off-site road improvements that are merely local streets or minor collectors. So what I suggested, I sent you guys a proposed amendment in email this earlier today, was simply to add some language that makes, and what I've suggested is that the state as an amendment on page 38, at the end of paragraph 2, the location and final layout of any proposed high-volume local or minor collector street shall not be required except pursuant to development plans approved and submitted by the owner of the property where the street is to be located. Because that's what's really going to happen. And until there's a decision made to develop the 400 acres that Ms. Moore owns that's bisected by these two proposed streets, I would venture to say that the board is not going to require her to require an adjacent developer to build local streets across someone else's farm property just because it can. They obviously use the power of eminent domain to do that, but I don't think that's been the board's policy. So if there's some language we can add to that section that give the property owner a little more comfort that this is not going to be dictated without permission, I think it would be helpful. And if it's something we need to work on, I mean, I think the amendment I've proposed is reasonable, but if there's something we can work on and have a date certain to come back and talk to the Planning Commission about it, I don't want to hold up the process of you all approving this. Obviously, you've got lots of things to do, but that's our concern, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry.
Good to see everybody.
Jimmy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start off by addressing Mr. Berry's comment. And I agree with everything he said. It is the road, and I'll point it out here shortly on the map, or actually I can now. The road in question really is it's east-west connector from Poteet Place over to Del Rio Pike. And we simply left the road in there because in 2016, modeling put this road on our plan. And until we really know what happens with the Moore property long-term, we didn't want to remove that road because it provides a good east-west connection over the Harpeth and over to ultimately Old Hillsborough Road. We are totally happy to work with Ms. Moore. We have along the way. The struggle I have tonight with the language is it does seem to handcuff the board and planning commission to only be able to build roads based on private property owners. And while I agree that development will drive most, if not all, of these roadways, I'm hesitant to add language that specifically says the property owners control where roadways are going to be built. We always want to work with them, certainly, and maybe there's some language we can come up with and bring it to another amendment another time. But given we got the language today, I recommend that we move forward with what we have in front of us, and then we will, at staff level, continue to work with Ms. Moore and come up with something that is agreeable. And but certainly understand that development will drive most of these roadways in this area. So just want to start with that, and then I'll go into the presentation. If anybody has any questions.
Whether I have additional time or not, but
Go ahead.
just so the commission will know, that language was provided to the city staff and to the board several months ago and has been discussed since midsummer with staff. So this shouldn't be a surprise to them. Once again, it's not a matter of Ms. Moore knows she can't dictate the construction of roads on her property because the city's got the power of eminent domain, but usually that's limited to major arterial roads, major collectors, and not to local streets, which are almost always have to do with the development of the property in question. So there ought to be a way to work out some language. My client does not want to have another open-ended, we'll get back with you, and we'll work that out. So if there's a way to bring that back to this board on a date certain, this commission on a date certain, that'd be agreeable. Otherwise, I think it's, frankly, is over-planning, if you will. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm through.
So over the past several months, going back into 2020, city staff met with several property owners and developers in the West Harpeth region. And I'll kind of step through each of the changes here tonight, starting with the West Harpeth area. And what you see in front of you tonight is the existing major thoroughfare plan. It shows several minor collector roads going through some large parcels of land. And over many months of discussion with the property owners and some development team, some land use densities were agreed to, and we have included those densities in the major thoroughfare plan as part of the changes we are presenting tonight. And knowing that some of these densities were significantly lower than what we had originally anticipated in 2016 when we did the modeling, we were able to reduce some of the collector roadway requirements in the region. And what you see in front of you was actually the dashed yellow lines were what was presented to city staff by the development team. It was Greg Gamble who had worked with several of the property owners as they kind of realized their vision for the properties long term. So we took that and implemented it into the plan, but also had a caveat in the major thoroughfare plan that allows city staff to work with property owners to move and adjust roadway, the high-volume local roadways as needed as their development plans come online. So as plans come before us, these
Now,
lines
just
could.
what you just said, though, sounds like it would, didn't you just say that you would work with?
Oh, yes.
Is that
I mean,
stated? I mean, is that stated in there, or are you just saying it?
It's stated that the city engineer can adjust roadways as needed as development comes online, something along those lines. So it's certainly, and it's something we do all the time, frankly. We've run into that in the Goose Creek Basin as well. As we embark on this study, we understand that there'll probably be another update to this plan coming forward as we kind of understand what sort of densities we're going to see out there. So that's really how this plan came before you tonight. And moving forward to the next slide with our actual changes to the plan, which removes some collector roadways from some of the larger parcels that went low density. Some have already started their development process in the county even on a very low density, I think 1 acre to every, or 1 lot to every 10 acres. So we understood the need to remove those. They're no longer needed. The city should not spend money on roads that aren't needed. We don't want to overbuild, certainly. So ultimately, this is the layout that we have adopted along with the local roadway plan.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that, and I, looking back at that one that we were just looking at, the West Harpeth area proposed, does it still have that fieldstone piece up there?
The what?
The fieldstone?
Oh, so the Fieldstone Parkway portion of the major thoroughfare plan amendment is on Amendment 5. That is not in front of you tonight.
Okay, okay.
So it's a separate amendment that's
Okay.
coming before you soon.
Thank you.
Moving to the Seward Hall area, based on the development plan that has been presented for the Poplar Farms, we went through the realignment of Market Street, which you all have seen. And given that we will no longer be tying into North Chapel Road, the cross connection of improvements on North Chapel Road would also be able to be removed. And I'll go ahead and move to that slide. This is the proposed layout for the connectivity of our collector roadways based on the development plans we've seen, some of the proposals we've seen that haven't come to fruition. This would support the densities that we've been presented out in this area, which ultimately gives us connectivity to 96, which is being improved now, and is spaced accordingly that traffic signals could be installed at those locations and are included on our traffic signal master plan. Some of the other changes, minor in nature, that were made, we upgraded Clovercroft Road from a minor collector to a major collector. That's the bold line at the top of the page here. In doing so, this will allow us, as developments are presented, for us to acquire additional right-of-way. And we don't know exactly how wide Clovercroft will need to be, but we do know that right-of-way is important. As buildings are pushed closer and closer to the right-of-way, we need to acquire as much as we can when we can, if not for the roadway, certainly for the utility relocations as needed. Liberty Pike, from Turning Wheel Lane to Wilson Pike, we reclassified that section from a minor arterial to a minor collector. We realized that through McKay's Mill, we're never going to widen that to a 4-lane median divided section or a 5-lane section. It's just not feasible, nor is it needed. In the Cool Springs area, we took a look at our multimodal and pedestrian plan a little closer, and where we typically have 6-foot sidewalks, we widened all those to 8-foot sidewalks. So when a development comes in, they would build a wider sidewalk to help promote that pedestrian connectivity, as well as we've already got some multi-use trails in the area as well. That's the summary of the changes. We also went through all the project sheets and updated our cost and some of the details in the plan, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other representatives of the public wish to speak to this item?
And I'm sorry, we recommend approval to the Planning Commission.
Okay, is there a motion on this item?
Move for approval.
Commissioner Allen?
Second.
And that's Commissioner Orr. Commissioner Orr, second. Is there any further discussion on this item?
Well,
Yeah, I have
to be
one
honest,
quick
I didn't
one.
go back and look at the whole 166 pages. But, so are you saying then that you have in there the idea about that's, you would work with the property owners on development?
I am happy to pull up that page
Thank you,
and read
thank
through
you.
it. Maybe
What
easier to
I
do
guess
that.
if you tell me what it is, I can pull it up too, but.
That is essentially my question too. Would this prohibit from staff working with Mr. Berry's client to help work on road location?
So it's page 38, but it's, of the PDF, it's page 44, but at the bottom of the page is 38. So essentially, the second paragraph is probably the most important. Recognizing the need for connectivity, the property owners proposed a network of high-volume roadways. These roadways are conceptual and shown for potential connectivity and planning. I think conceptual is probably the key word there. Final layout and location shall be determined by city staff with FMPC and/or BOMA approval. These high-volume local roadways can be constructed as development occurs in the area.
Tell me the page number.
So it's, at the bottom of the page is 38, but I think in the total packet it's 44.
Oh, 44. I misunderstood that.
Sir, is the concern, if I heard you right, not the major, but the minor collectors in the local streets?
Thinking of the minor collectors and local streets, and I don't think that the engineers, I think that we could have meaningful discussions with the engineer's office. We'd just like that to happen more quickly. Excuse me. A lot of different heights at this podium tonight.
Yes, thank you.
What's concerning to me, though, is that if the property owner to the west wanted to build a subdivision, and this planning commission concluded, yes, we want you to go ahead and acquire, and see if you can acquire right-of-way from Ms. Moore to build that local street across her property, because we think it's a good idea. And if you can't do that, then the city will use its power of eminent domain to condemn a local street, mind you, across somebody. She may never want to develop that farm. The location of that street goes right behind a house that was built in 1830. Who's to say it goes there? I realize it's conceptual. I realize it may never get built, but it's not an arterial roadway. It's not a major collector. It's a local street that may or may not even be necessary for development on her property or adjacent property, and it's on an official map of the city now as a recommendable route. Isn't there some way to soften that to protect the interests of the property owner? That's all we're asking.
And if I may, as you can see on the map, the larger tract over there is at 1 unit per every 10 acres developed in the county. Most of the property north of that is kind of piecemeal parcels. We can confidently say that staff would not recommend that road go in unless absolutely necessary. There's probably a $15 million bridge involved, maybe more. The road itself, total with the bridge, probably $30 million. That's not something the city would recommend be high on the CIP list at any point in time unless this property develops. What we struggle with is putting concrete language in the major thoroughfare plan that, to us, feels as though we're losing the ability for the board and planning commission to make decisions. And certainly, we always appreciate the input, and we would work with any property owner on any of these issues. I think we're struggling with the language portion of it a little bit, so that's where we are.
If we could, the current text says it's going to be development driven. That means that private property owners are going to be involved in decision making, but the current text says it should be decided by the FMPC or BOMA. That's okay. I get that. I get that that's the process. There ought to be a way to make sure that the private property owner's voice is still heard other than simply, yeah, we'll work with you. I trust the engineering department to act in good faith. That's fine. But that's, Mr. Wise may be gone next year. I don't know. So,
But I feel compelled to tell you, we've sat here till 1 o'clock in the morning, listened to hundreds of citizens and property owners. And it is the job of us to listen to citizens.
Of course it is.
But we also listen to citizens who come in here and do not want us to place a street. So if we allow, there are citizens who don't want connectivity. So I agree that we cannot have our board or the Board of Mayor and Aldermen tied to a property owner telling us exactly where to put a street. I think there has to be some trust. That's why citizens elect the board. That's why we're appointed to do that. And Doug, you know that. You've served in the city, and I understand you have to represent your client.
y'all
But
still
we
meet
cannot
after
have
midnight?
language, I don't feel we can have language in there that ties us, that says that each individual property owner can tell us where to place this. So I can't go with you on that. I understand your job, but I understand our job, that there's a planning commission that listens to citizens. There will be a board of mayor and aldermen that will listen to citizens. So I think that it's conceptual to begin with, but we will look after the best interests of citizens. That's our job. And that's all I'll say about that. I understand.
thank you.
All right. Okay, so we've got a motion to adopt the amendment number 4 to the major thoroughfare plan. Is there any, and a proper second, is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, by roll call vote, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore, Commissioner Mann, Commissioner Orr, Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson, and Chair Lindsay votes aye, so that motion passes.
I do want to say, though, that when it says final layout and location shall be determined kind of by city staff and planning commission and/or BOMA approval, I think it'd have to be both of those approvals.
It's written that way because the planning commission ultimately approves
We approve
the
it
document,
Wednesday.
and the board gives planning commission the recommendation.
They located. We don't know.
Okay? That concludes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
I got a motion by Commissioner Orr, and a second by Marcia. Commissioner Allen. All in favor, by roll call, Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrison,
Aye.
Commissioner McLemore, Commissioner Mann, Commissioner Orr, Alderman Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williamson, and Chair Lindsay votes aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned.